Hi, I'm Killian, Equipment Officer for DCU Photostock. I hope you've all had a great Christmas and that you're all staying safe and that you're all ready for another lockdown. So this is going to be the first of a three-part series that I've been meaning to do since the start of the year, where I'm going to go through the process of shooting a roll of film completely from start to finish. So loading it into the camera, shooting, unloading the camera, and then actually developing it and scanning it yourself. I don't actually own a scanner, but I've been having good results by scanning the film with a DSLR, but I might be able to get my hands on a scanner before we get to that point, so we'll see. Okay, so here's the film I'm going to be using, Ilford Delta 100, and here's just a quick tip for you. If you're going to be leaving film in your camera for a while, especially if you have more than one camera, and I know I've definitely done this because I've got 3 cameras right now with film in them that I don't even know what it is, but just rip the back of the box off and pop it into this little thing. Wowee, look at that, now you know what film's in your camera. Okay, so your film normally comes in a little cartridge like this. Just pop that bad boy open, take it out, and there you are. Now you'll notice on these things that they have a wider end, a narrower end, and then this little flappy bit of film at the end. So to open up the camera here, you lift up the rewind lever. So on the top left here, you see it has this little rewind lever here. Pop that up like so and keep pulling it until there's a little click and the back of the camera just opens just like that. Now one thing to keep an eye on here, be very careful not to touch the shutter. So this little rectangle right here in the middle, that's basically your image frame. That's the little rectangle that's going to be your image when you take your picture. But in the middle of this black thing here, that's the shutter, and you never want to touch that because they're super fragile and you can very easily put your finger through that. So I'll set this to a super low, just whack my camera there. I'll set this to a low shutter speed, like 1 second, so you can see what's happening here when you press the button. Okay, see the way it opens and closes like that? That little flappy bit, yeah, don't touch that. Okay, so with these old types of SLRs, the narrow bit of the film, like I said earlier, there's a wide bit and a narrow bit. The narrow bit goes pointing down, okay? So you slot that in. You know what, I'm going to reset this whole setup because this is impossible. Okay, if this isn't the worst framing I've ever had in a video, I don't know what is. So, alright, narrow end down. Pop that in there. Now at this point, to make it a bit easier, you can go ahead and pop down your rewind lever like that, all the way into position. And now you'll see if I turn this to the clockwise direction, it's going to start catching on the film and pulling it that way. So that's how you know it's engaged and in place. You're going to grab this and pull the leading edge across your shutter. Being careful not to touch the actual shutter because you can damage it. Now if we look over here on the right hand side, this little spindly boy over here has got little tiny little, almost like a cog, like little tiny little ratchety things, and that's what's going to go into these holes on the back of the film. And the one on the right hand side here has these little slits cut out into it, and that's where you're going to place the leading edge, the little narrow part of your film right here, just into one of those slits. And now with your thumb here, you're just going to want to rotate this left spindly boy a little bit until those little cog things are going into the holes on the back of your film. So once you have the leading edge in this bad boy over here and the little sticky outy bits in the holes of your film right here, you can go ahead and wind on a frame just like that. You can just use your finger there like I did to make sure that it's being guided in correctly. But once these little things are still inside the holes on the film, and you've gotten one good wind around on the right hand side one, you can go ahead and take a shot. You can close the back of the camera now. Now you'll notice here on this particular camera, we're not even on frame 0 yet. We're actually 2 frames below frame 0. Some other film cameras, like my Minolta X700 does this, it won't engage the electronics, it won't turn on the light meter until you're on frame 0. This particular camera doesn't do that. but we're still probably going to want to get another couple of shots off just to make sure that the film's rounded on correctly, because even though it appears to be rounded on correctly right now, that film inside the camera might actually come loose and come off that little spindly boy that we saw there. To make sure that that doesn't happen, I'm going to load on 2 more shots here. Now, a good way to check if your film is wound on correctly is while you're winding on your next shot over here, keep your eye on the rewind lever over here. If that turns counterclockwise while we're winding on the film, we know that we're good, okay? Let's do another one. And there we go. It wound, so we know that we're good. And then the last thing we're going to want to do is set our ISO. So on this camera, our ISO dial, oh, actually, let's zoom it in. Wowee, look at that. So on this camera, the ISO dial is right here on the left. On most, you'll find it's actually on the top right here, but on this particular one, it's on the back like that. And now to set this can be a little tricky sometimes to find. So you've got your rewind lever in the middle. You have your exposure compensation dial right here. We won't worry about that for the time being. Might touch on that later. But then the very outermost ring, this black ring right here, that's my ISO dial. And to engage that, you actually have to lift up the entire ring and turn it. So it won't turn unless I actually lift up that entire ring and rotate it. Now we're going the wrong way, so let's go back this way. Now, for most of you, you're going to want to set it to the ISO marked on your film. So in our case, we'd be setting it right there on ISO 100, right? But since I'm not really going to be working with enough light to expose an ISO 100 film, I'm going to be pushing it 2 stops. That would be from 100, 1 stop to 200, 2 stops to 400, and that's where I'm going to leave it right there on ISO 400. So now, whenever I take a shot, if I'm going by what my light meter is telling me is the correct exposure, this film is going to be 2 stops underexposed. It's going to be 2 stops darker. That's 4 times darker than what it needs to be. But since I know that I'm underexposing it 2 stops, when I'm developing it later, I'm going to be developing it for longer. That's going to make it come out twice as bright to counteract the fact that it's twice as dark as it needs to be, and it's going to come out correctly exposed. Alright, so that's it for this part. In the next part, I'm going to be shooting this roll of film, so I'll try to go for a few walks in the park if it stops raining for long enough. Maybe take some pictures of family or whatever, I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. And then in the third part, I'm going to be developing it and hopefully scanning it with a real scanner, but if not, I'll be using my DSLR. So thanks for watching, and hope you had a very happy Christmas.